Thank you so much, Trevor, and thank you also for the invitation to open the 2 days of Pharma Integrates today. I'm really honored and pleased to be here today. As Trevor said, my colleagues and I'm not alone, and there are another 50 people in Brussels helping in what is quite an interesting challenge to represent you as the pharmaceutical industry, but really try to bring us all together towards the better outcomes for patients, which is what we're all working towards. And I've been in FPA now about 18 months, but before that I was 21 years with the biotech industry. Not just healthcare biotech, but also agricultural and industrial biotech. And at the start, I'm a scientist. I'm a biotechnologist, a biochemist. This is what I like. This is what I love really very deeply. And the reason I'm saying that is because when I was contacted by the pharmaceutical industry in my first interviews, I asked a little bit about how much the pharmaceutical industry collaborates. How does coalition building and alliance building go in the pharmaceutical industry? And I realized quite quickly, as I had already understood in my previous years at Europa Bio, that actually of the 3 sectors I'd worked in, the healthcare sector is perhaps the one that is more used to working in silos and has a harder time collaborating and communicating with the other parts of the healthcare system, probably because we've never had to. We've never had to, hospitals have never had to, nurses have never had to. The healthcare system, sort of every little cog worked on its own. And now, as Trevor was saying, these revolutions or these Mexican waves of biotech on the one hand, from our industry all the way down to the patient, and IT on the other hand, from the patient all the way up to us in terms of data, are forcing us, or at least give us an opportunity to start collaborating, because we can miss that opportunity. We can certainly do that and try and continue to work on our own in terms of harnessing biotech to find incredible solutions, but we'll miss the data and the information that comes from patients. And at the same time, or the digital side will not function if we're not involved as well. So I think we have this opportunity of a Mexican wave or silent revolutions occurring that forces us to initiate that dialogue. And at the same time, I'm also very surprised when, not everybody stands up and says, well, I work for the best industry in the world. I mean, for me, it's quite obvious. I don't know if it's because I'm a scientist or a mother or whatever, but I think what other industry makes people's lives better? And I like a nice handbag and a nice pair of shoes just like anybody else, but it's not really going to make my life any longer or better or a better quality of life. So this really is the best industry in the world, and yet we've never really stopped to communicate that at all. And I'm not just talking about billboards, I'm even talking within the healthcare system. So when we now have these incredible treatments that in some cases are cures and revolutionize entirely generations in some cases, because if you find a cure to a hereditary disease, that's a revolution that is far-reaching. On the other side of the table, when you discuss this improvement with payers and policymakers, they're stuck on well, what's the price at the beginning? What am I going to have to pay up front? How am I going to be able to sustain that price? And that is probably because we're going into that conversation on our own. We're having the conversation as a pharmaceutical industry with policymakers about our treatment. We're not having the conversation as a healthcare system about what the treatment will do in the long run in terms, not only to the patient in terms of outcomes, but also in terms of optimizing healthcare expenditure, in terms of changing hospital needs, primary care, secondary care, etc. And so we're having a sort of limited conversation in an unrealistic way. And other sectors haven't done that. So and I'm just going to do the analogy because it's areas that I worked with. If you look at GMOs, that's a dangerous area to talk about, but even industrial biotechnology. So industrial biotechnology is taking natural resources or waste and turning them into chemicals or other materials. So you're basically using a technology to replace existing products by more sustainable products. That's an uncomfortable technology in the sense that there are existing products that are not too happy to be displaced. So what the sector did at the beginning, realizing that although they were a fantastic innovation, they were going to disrupt both the down chain, sort of producers of primary materials, and also up chain, the final products. They had to have a conversation. They had to be part of a supply chain that supported that revolution, that supported that chain. And so today you have Lego supporting the use of industrial biotech, but I can assure you that at the beginning, Lego was not too pleased to know that there was biodegradable plastics that could be used instead of what they were already using. And so in the same way, I think pharma and the revolutions that we're living, we're part of an ecosystem that leads all the way to the patient, and we need to have that conversation on how we are disrupting the system with our technology, and also how we need the other disruptions to help improve and be more effective in what we do in terms of R&D. If we can get the data back from the patients in a proper way, we were discussing about patient registries and the difficulties with that, we will be much more efficient in terms of how we do things, and much more successful at reaching the right patient outcomes. So when colleagues sent me some input for this speech, they were more looking at they were more telling me about the challenges, and there are all these challenges and we can't do it alone, and that I agree with. Of course, there are also a number of challenges, and you mentioned the global competition for investment, Trevor. This is a moment where China is increasing its IP considerably. The US is finding other ways of attracting investment. We have been and we continue to be a hub for pharmaceutical research and development and manufacturing, and we want to keep that position. But you know as well as I do that investors don't like uncertainty. Industry doesn't like uncertainty. And at the moment, we have a number of things that are slightly uncomfortable. One of them is the UK leaving the EU, which creates a level of uncertainty, certainly in our sector, but also more in general in terms of politics and an external person's view of the region Europe. And then at European level, we have some discussions around intellectual property incentives, which are very concerning to us. And we're really trying as an industry to explain the value of intellectual property to our industry and to the products that we ultimately make for our patients. And there you go back to communicating. IP is I'm not a lawyer, I'm a scientist. IP is such a difficult thing to communicate. I remember when I was working in Italy and we were just getting the European law, the biotech patent law into Italy, to explain to members of parliament what the patent on a gene did not forbid other people to use that gene, but just forbade the use of the gene and the pathway. I had to use all sorts of analogies. And I think really as an industry, we have to be much better at communicating our value and what we do and why we do it and what we need to do it. We've started as EFPIA a communication initiative called We Won't Rest. So if you look at hashtag We Won't Rest, to be social media, you'll find quite a lot of information. And basically it has the faces of people, mostly of our industry, but also other people in the healthcare system, saying why they do what they do. Why do they work at Pfizer? Why are they a nurse? And very shortly we'll be launching the patient chapter of that, which is called For the Chance. And it's patients who are willing to explain what the extra life years that they're getting from the treatment, or that they hope to get from the treatment, will give them as a chance to do something else. So that's really very powerful. And we haven't said that because I think we just thought, it's obvious we make medicines to make people better. Why do I need to explain that? But today, everybody is an expert. Everybody has an iPhone and Googles things and goes to their doctor and says, I have this, and I want this treatment, and it's available in that country, and please could you go? I've done it. We all do it. And so unless we communicate about our value and what we're trying to do and why we're trying to do it and the obstacles, somebody else will. And you know that that's happening already. And that puts us at risk of not being part of the conversation and not being rightfully, or being part of the conversation in the wrong way, if you like. So I was just quickly thinking about 3 areas of collaboration that we've already done successfully as an industry. At European level, we have the Innovative Medicines Initiative that has been going now for 10 years, and we're looking at a next iteration of it. And that's if you want to look at it, it's a research platform where you have more than just industry, you have academia and also, to a certain extent, regulators, patients, and payers involved in trying to find solutions to make research more efficient. So you're not looking for products, you're looking for ways to make research more efficient. We've had 2 iterations, we're looking to a third one. And for the third one, instead of just being EFPIA and the European Commission funding it, we're looking at medtech, we're inviting medtech, digital, biotech, diagnostics all in, so that we can have, again, a better collaborative and faster way of reaching results. At the same way, we're organizing a European Health Summit, the first one at the end of this month. there are lots of conferences in life, but next year there'll be the European elections, a new parliament, a new commission. There was a question about whether the European level should look at health at all. And 28 stakeholders from the healthcare system, not just patients and industry, but everybody in between, got together to work for months on what we think the next commission and parliament should do in healthcare. And that was new for EFPIA as well as for other organizations to actually say, well, okay, we're not going to lead anything. We're going to sit back and work with 28 other organizations for 6 months. And so look it up. I think it's an interesting summit, the European Health Summit. And then the other work, of course, is the things we do with patients. So we have a patient think tank in EFPIA, but we also have an IMI project called Paradigm, which is really looking at how do you insert patients is the wrong way. How do you involve patients at every step of the research and development of a medicine? Because really, at the end of the day, they know what outcomes make a difference to them. It's not always the outcomes that we think. And you discover, when you speak to patients, and I'm sure you do, a cancer patient says, I don't just want to survive, I actually want to be able to take my kid to school, or I want to be able to take my dog for a walk, or I want to be able to, and these are the things that you can only know and understand if you have that patient involvement done in a very specific way. So my last really recommendation would be that it all rests on us, which is if you're having a good day, it's okay. If you're having a bad day, it kind of feels rather bad. So I'd like to challenge us really to be as innovative as we are with our research and finding these incredible treatments and innovations that we are finding. So trying to be as innovative as we are in our treatments, in finding new ways to collaborate at every step. So collaborate on research, on development and manufacturing and distribution, and really finding solutions with other partners to make us much more effective and efficient. The OECD estimates about 20% of the cost of developing a medicine in the healthcare system is wasted. 20% is a lot of money. In the healthcare system is wasted. So it means if our contribution to the healthcare bill is about 15%, let's say maximum, if you've got 20% wastage, it means that if you got rid of that waste, you could really do a lot. And I think getting rid of that waste can only be done if we collaborate, and if whatever we do in our Mexican wave of biotech that affects all the way down to the patient is received and used in the best possible way by the rest of the healthcare system, and whatever data we can get back from the patient really influences the way we, but also all the other parts of the healthcare system, do their job. So that would be my challenge, and the last thought is really the clock is ticking, and it's not really the clock of usual industries. The problem is the clock that's ticking is the patient's clock. And that's really what we're working against. And there isn't much time. There isn't any time, I think a patient would say. So looking forward to the conference. I wish you a fantastic 2 days. And thank you again for inviting me.